Figured I will show you all the notes that I have on rearing teenagers. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. There is no hope. So we're just going to close in prayer. We'll read one verse and then we'll close in prayer. Luke chapter 2. It's really the only verse we have here in the Bible that deals with Jesus Christ during his teen years as he was growing up. We see you get an idea where he was at around the 12 years of age mark and the wisdom he already demonstrated. But we do have a truth here in verse 52 that dealt with Christ's maturity as a human, because he not only was 100% God, he was 100% man. And it says this, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man." Let's go ahead and pray. Father in heaven, Lord, we love you. We thank you for your word. We ask your blessing upon the service tonight, Lord. I pray that you be glorified and honored in all that's said and done. Lord, I pray that you give us wisdom as parents in the rearing of our children, that we would rear them, Lord, that they would love you and serve you because they love you. Lord, so guide and direct. I pray that you'd help the parents that are here to give wisdom that's needed in each of the different households in helping our children to come to a point where they realize the greatness of you, and that what they desire more than anything else is to serve you and to love you. So, Lord, I pray that you would guide in this. You know it needs to be said and for what each household needs, and so I pray that your Spirit would use the words and be a help and a strength in our families in the rearing of our children, Lord. Please bless and work. Again, I love you, and I pray and ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. Again, this text is really about the only verse we have in Scripture that deals with Christ and his maturity coming through the teen years, is Luke chapter 2 and verse 52. Obviously, once you jump from the event that we have taking place with him before the temple, the next time we come across him, he is starting his ministry. He's around 30 years of age. And so, nonetheless, this text gives us some great wisdom that we do need for our ability to successfully raise our kids, especially when they are teenagers. Again, it does not say that Jesus increased in his sports ability. He was not mastering rugby when he was growing up. He did not increase in popularity. That's not what Joseph and Mary were worried about. It wasn't his sports ability. It wasn't his popularity, nor was it his social networking skills. That's not what he was growing in. They did not have Jerusalem Facebook up yet, and he was not worried about anything of the sort. What it does say he increased in, though, is exactly what we need our teenagers to increase in, even preteen as they're coming into this, and that is they need to increase in wisdom. They need to increase in stature, which deals with maturity. I'll cover that a little bit. And increase in favor with God and man. And so those are some key goals in the lives of our children as they grow and as we raise them. This is what we're gearing our kids to. Again, I'd say perhaps one of the most feared times as a parent is dealing with the teen years. I was afraid of it so much that I moved my kids to the jungle for all of their teenage years. So I would not have any of those problems. They had nowhere to go. They didn't have any of those issues. God never actually called us to New Guinea. Daniel hit 10. I figured I had 2 years of debutation before I'd get there, and he'd be 13 by the time we arrived. My plan worked perfectly. And now we're going back now that Levi's almost there. We have to go back now. No, but the reality is it is a fear time, but it does not have to be. It really can be one of the most enjoyable times in the rearing of your children when they're teenagers. You can really begin to see a bond grow, especially between a father and a son, a mother and a daughter, and of course a father and a daughter, and a mother and a son as well. It can be a great time of rearing your kids, and it should be. It should be a time of joy. But the reality is, though, that we deal with, it's usually, in many cases, a time of great conflict and difficulty. Again, many parents spend a lot of sleepless nights during the teenage years and then after teenage years as well, worrying about their kids and the direction of their life. And again, I talked about this last week. The numbers are scary about how many of our kids, when they do hit 18, 19, or have that first opportunity of self-responsibility, and they're gone. They want nothing to do with the Lord. And again, those numbers are scary. We want to avoid that. Again, by the teen years or early into them, we should desire to see as parents a teen who has a heart for God. This isn't something that hits when they're 20 or 25 or 30. This should be hitting very, very early in the teen years. A genuine heart for God. And parents, we parent them that way. And teenagers, although let me say this is going towards it, and I'll direct a few things at our teens to try and be help to them in this service as well. Please understand this. I think Brother Weldy, after last week's message, had a couple of questions. And I told him, I said, to be honest, we're giving out good Bible principles, and we're going to do that, and that's needed. I said, but the reality is, with genuine conversion taking place, that should take care of a lot of it. It really should. The desire should begin to grow from salvation. In other words, teenagers, when you stand before God, the parenting abilities of your parents are not going to matter before God. You'll be accountable for your actions before Him. All right? Nonetheless, as parents, we do want to parent them. And this message, of course, is geared to try and give help to our kids. Again, parents, if you're going to wait and say, I'm just going to wait and send them off to Bible college and that'll turn them around, you're certainly dead wrong about that. Bible college is not going to turn your child around one bit. I mean, head off to our Bible colleges and take a look. There's still, even there's not a great percentage who have a genuine heart for God. Many of them are there because their parents forced them to go, and that's why they're there. But when we look in the Scripture, what I find interesting is this. I want you to think, if I was to ask you right now, two of perhaps the greatest people in the Bible in regards to being used of God and purity, or the two people who really we have nothing poor said about them, nothing, no sinfulness, anything like that. You know, there's two people that come to mind, of course, Joseph and Daniel. And the Bible lets us know when they started serving God. They were teenagers. How about the person who's after God's own heart? Who's that in the Bible? That's David. When did he start serving God? His teenage years. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, teenage years. Listen, this is something that begins now, especially teenagers. Listen, this isn't something you wait for. We're in a culture right now that gears everything towards 18, 19, this educational process. But understand, when it becomes, when it's your life before God, that starts now. Now, not at 14 or at 15 or at 16 or at 17. You're a person before God right now that He desires to use. And so again, as we see this in the Bible, from even Mary for that matter, or Timothy for that matter, the majority of those who were really used that we see in Scripture of God in a great way, Josiah, all started in their younger years. That's when it began. And parents, we need to allow our kids to serve. Put them in a position where they can serve the Lord. Allow it to take place. Now understand this. Ordering service does not produce a servant's heart. The goal as a parent is to have the desire in your child to serve, and then you as a parent making that possible. And the Lord will honor that. Again, I remember in my teenage years and having that desire. I remember actually having a desire to serve for teenagers. I remember that. Again, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So I didn't have different principles in place. There wasn't things, I didn't have all these different things I'm going to get into here were not present in my home. But I did have salvation. I mean, I remember as soon as I got saved, I remember such a desire to serve. I remember going to the pastor, saved just a couple of months, and just saying, I want to do something. I'm 12, 13 years old. What can I do? That's when he gave me the Sunday school book. I got some tracts, and that's what I did. And then after it began growing, I still wanted to serve, wanted to do more. I found out about nursing homes. And I can go in there every day. Started going there every day. I had a car. I can drive in there. Started going every day. And he allowed me to start preaching there every day, 7 days a week. Allow your kids to serve. Do you know how many ministries here they can get involved in? And that takes efforts on the part of parents. Listen, I would much rather have you exerting yourself to get your kids in parents than the ball games. Let them serve. Let them serve. And so let me go over some principles here to help us with our teenagers, because this is a transitional time in their life. It's when they are going from being a child into an adult. And hopefully the things we dealt with last week, a lot of those things are in place. And honestly, those of you who don't have any teenagers yet, do understand this. Your biggest battles are won before they get to 13. Before they get to 13. That doesn't mean if you're just starting there that you give up. No, it just means you got a tougher battle. You're going to spend a little bit more time on your knees in prayer, so it's going to be taking place. All right? So let's deal with this when we're dealing with teenagers. Number one here, we need to guard against things that can hurt our teenagers. All right? You're to parent them. They have to grow in wisdom still. That's going to be needed to take place. And in many cases, you're going to be the wisdom for your teenager. You've got to parent them. You've got to protect them from things that are going to hurt them. All right? Let me cover a few of those things that can hurt our teenagers. Number one here, let me deal with a big one, and that is guarding them against simply relying on your faith, the faith of mom and dad. Don't get me wrong, you're the first example that they're going to see is you. And as they're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and they're growing during that time frame, there's much reliance on mom and dad's faith. It's the life that they know. But it is when they start to come into the teenage years when a transition needs to occur, and we parent them to that end, where God becomes their God. Look over in 1 Chronicles chapter 28. We're still praying this for Bethany. She isn't quite there yet. She probably won't ever find a husband. She is asking prayer for that. And I have no idea if my English teacher is alive or not. I never did find out from last week. If she heard me speaking and trying to say English, she probably would die. So that might do that. All right, 1 Chronicles 28. This is David talking here to his son. And I love what he says to Solomon. Verse 9. And thou, Solomon, my son, know the God of thy father, and serve him with a perfect heart and with a willing mind. For the Lord searcheth all hearts, and understandeth all the imaginations of the thoughts. If thou seek him, he will be found of thee. But if thou forsake him, he will cast thee off forever. And he continues on with his exhortation to his son Solomon. But he's letting him know, Solomon, God needs to be your God. You're the one who needs to seek him now. Just like he was there for me, he's going to be there for you. That's true. But now you have the choice. He has to become your God where you are seeking him. And that's what we desire as parents, where that transition takes place, where they desire to serve God. We need to guide him to this. Again, and much of this takes place, by the way, I do believe, when our children see a very real walk with God in our lives. That's the guiding. It's when they see how real God is in your life. And then when we put in the different principles and the teachings in the household, that it combines it. They've got to see that it's real in your life. They've got to see where God is changing you. I would tell my kids, and I said this as we're going to do different things, that my desire was that even if I walked away from the faith, you need to be in a place where you already know I'm not going anywhere. That I'm serving God because I want to. That even if tomorrow, if I went before my kids and I said, listen, I'm done, I'm not doing anything. Where Levi's saying, I'm going to church. Where he's not, all right. Does this mean I get more than an hour of video games? Then I would have to choke him out right there or something like that. I don't know. I would not. I'm just kidding. All right. Where they need to serve God because they want to. Not because it's simply the culture of the household. We want that culture in the household, but we don't want the culture to be the motivation for them. We want them to produce that culture on their own, even if it doesn't exist. And of course, as our kids get older, when we get nervous as each of them head out of the household. Again, Daniel was the first one out. And I won't go over that day. That was still a horrible day when he left New Guinea. That was one of the roughest days of my life when Daniel left. I had no idea how hard that day was going to hit me until I actually watched that plane take off at 6 a.m. And of course, I had the thoughts, and you're hoping as a parent. I mean, I saw all the indications that it was genuine, that it was real, but you wonder, I'm on the other side of the world. I hope all this took. Because now he's in a place I'm not around. And he was still going right into a structured environment, which I liked. It wasn't just, open. There was wisdom in place in how we were going about that. But you just don't know. And of course, he went through college 4 years and did well. He didn't have any problems, anything like that. And anyhow, he had graduated college. He'd been out of college a couple of years when we were coming back to the States. And so we were cleaning stuff out of the kids' room as me and Mary and Levi were preparing to come back from New Guinea. And I was in the kids' room by myself and going through I was in Daniel's room, which was, this time was Daniel and Levi's room. And so I was going through Daniel's stuff, and I came across something. I wish I would have brought some of them up here that I'd had. I taught my kids when they did their devotions. I never forced it, and I let them know what I did, and I said, listen, I really recommend this. Matter of fact, if you're in counseling with me for any reason, usually you're going to get this during the counsel. And I said, listen, if your devotions are going into a law, what I want you to do is get a notebook out, and you start writing down what the devotion is for that day. What grabbed you about it? You grab some of the verse, I want you to write it down. Put the date down. I said, I'm usually in 3 different parts, and each of the part that you're in, write something down from each point, from each part of your reading. And I said, then when the passion, the fire's back a little bit, you don't necessarily have to do that, but that will help you with it. I said, what that's going to do is going to force you to think about what you're reading. All right? And, but I never checked. I just let them know that's what I'd recommend. So anyway, we're cleaning out their stuff, and I came across a stack of notebooks of Daniel's. A stack. I didn't know what they were. I opened them up. I mean, every page is filled. It was his devotions. Every page was filled. I never had a clue. He didn't do this for me. It wasn't why he did it, because Dad said so. And right there, I remember sitting there, and I just started crying. I realized he got it. He really understood when he was a teenager. He understood. What I knew right then was, I knew it already. He was already out of college. But God was his God. Had I walked away, by the way, he still would have went. That transition had occurred. It had occurred. And so we want to make sure that they're not relying simply on parents' faith. Again, I've said this many times before, and I said to my kids all the time, and there's a good principle there they need to know, that they don't impress me when they do right when I'm around. They impress me when they do right and I'm not around. They impress me when they do right, when there is an opportunity or a temptation there, but they fight against it and they avoid it. Because that's when it begins to show character. So we have to guide our children to the place where God becomes their God. They have to see that in our life, that our walk is real, and we work on that transition in their life. The second thing here is this. You watch for things that can steal their heart. Again, a popular verse is Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 23. Guard the heart, for out of it are the issues of life. Am I quoting that right? Keep the heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Thank you. We have to help as they're growing into maturity, as that transition's taking place. Please understand there will be a battle for their affection. You're being an incredibly ignorant parent if you're not aware of that. There will be a genuine battle to grab your child's heart, for something to grab their time, their attention, and their affection. Again, and when you begin to see something that grabs your child's heart, that should concern you immediately, quickly. This is something that begins to take the place that God should have in their life. I remember with one of my children, they were about 15 at the time, and I saw something like this taking place. It started with a comment that was made from a relative, and then a book that was read. And it was a Christian book. And then I noticed some comments made, and immediately that became a priority in prayer. And I was realizing something. It wasn't that the comment changed anything or that the book did. But what it both revealed to me was there was a level of growth that wasn't taking place. That wasn't there. It wasn't the comment or the book that caused anything. It was letting me know, wait, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. And so it's not like, again, I mentioned this, it's not like I can just go to the person and say, all right, this is off. I don't think you have the desire for God as you should. You're seeing this wrong. Change it. You know what? I found that doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, don't worry, you better believe I had a sit down or two. And first thing I did, of course, I started praying for wisdom. I got with Mary Ann and said, listen, here's a concern. We need to address this. We got to start praying about this now. And praying for wisdom and praying for wisdom. And then I would go and talk and let my concerns know. And at first they thought it was nothing. And probably in that child's mind, it probably was nothing. But in reality, it wasn't. I mean, and this is just starting off, just like some comments were made, and that was it. And I thought those comments could be something that was dealing with life and what I want to do when I get older. And I thought, well, that's taking you a whole other direction. And so the concern was great. So, well, that was just growing up in a comment. I said, listen, I don't want anything like that holding their imagination. And so I would talk and just let them know my concerns with it and praying for wisdom. You don't want anything that begins to take that place, that begins to steal their affections. Many times, we as parents, we give our children the very thing that steals their affection. We put it in their life. We're the one that puts something before them that says, listen, you're to love God and have Him, but He has His place. Look at this, though. We provide Him with the very thing that steals their affection. We have to be careful with that. Different things in our culture that does that. I'll list three. Sports is one. Sports is absolutely a god in America. And I love sports growing up. I played it, and I have, Levi enjoys sports, and the sports itself is not the sin. It's the place it begins to take. And I'm going to have to be careful this year because clearly the Cleveland Browns are now on the way to winning the Super Bowl with the recent acquisitions. And so this year will not count towards this point whatsoever. No, I'm just kidding. But I certainly did never, ever, and I knew that from the time Daniel was born. I knew what sports meant to me growing up. I mean, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Sports was everything. And I knew the place they had in my life. I knew when Daniel was a baby, I already knew I never wanted sports to be that important to him. I never wanted that in this place. I mean, before I came to know Christ, I either want to go to Ohio State or USC and play football. But I would discover at 5'8 and a half, that's not very likely. But I knew I wanted my kids to live for the Lord, and I did not want anything in place that could steal that. See, my greatest fear was that with the sports, they would be really good at it. If they were average or, below average, I'm pretty good with that. But my fear is, no, they'd be good at it. And then they get a little bit of praise and some accolades that come with it. We all know how pride works, and it grabs. There's a tension there. Wow, did you see how Dad cheered? Did you see how the crowd arose? I don't want anything in their life that could grab their attention. And so be careful with it. It doesn't mean sports is wrong. What I did, and as parents, what I recommend you do is this then. We're all going to allow our kids to enjoy those different things. I mean, we still do. I still play sports, and I'm 49 years old. But what I recommend you do is this. You have to set up standards in regard to anything that can hinder your child or something like sports that can completely grab them and consume them. Set up standards that are based on convictions. All right? Say, well, what do you mean by that? All right, a conviction would be something you have about anything that is a Bible principle that would be sin. In other words, again, an easy one to grab off the top of my head is the Bible says it's shame for man to have long hair. All right. So a conviction is, because it's sin, is I should not have long hair. That's a conviction. Everybody follow me? All right. My standard does not get to the point of sin, though. All right? I have a standard then because that's in place. I set up a standard. If I break the standard, that's not sin. All right. My standard is, it's been that way since I was Air Force or just before, since I was Air Force. I'm not going to let my hair touch my ears. That was a standard. That was the Air Force standard. I said, that's a good one. That's what I'm going to put in place from here on out. Is it a sin if my hair touches my hair? No, it's not. Not at all. But I set up the standard to protect me from ever getting to the place of sin. Do you understand that? All right? So when it comes to things like sports, set up standards to protect. Set up standards to protect.
And you as parents decide that. I'm not going to decide that for you. I had different ones in place in my life. That might not be the same for you, and that's fine. Just don't, but protect. Don't think that's not going to happen to my Johnny. You're being naive. Okay? You're being naive. Set up different standards to protect your children. And I did that with sports. Levi knows what those are. He knows the limitations that I have on him when it comes to sports. He knows what I will allow him to do and won't do when it comes to, especially anything organized. He knows why. It's not that it's sin, because it isn't. But it's standards I have in place. All right? And so protect from it. And it was easy for me because I grew up in a family where sports was everything. And then as I was a teenager, started serving God. I remember the place even had in the church, one thing that bugged me to death, and I was 16, 17 years old, and I was taking it serious, that I love my pastor to death. I don't want to tell on him here too much. But he really liked softball, and we had a really, really good softball team. But the starters of the softball team, the only time you saw them ever was softball season. They had to attend one service a week, and so when softball season started, boop, they were there. I mean, we had guys sliding the third, get tagged out, and they would cuss out the umpire in the church softball league because of the place sports took. It was important. And now that's an extreme example, but that was a very real one. Like, you have to set up protections for something that can grab their heart. That's something that all of a sudden they can. Do you know, when I dealt with this with Levi, I think we had just got back and Olympics was on. And so we were watching one of the Olympic events, and I don't remember which one it was. And we were talking about, and I let them know why this is wrong, what we're seeing. I said, do you understand how many hours of dedication this person had to put in to perform at that level? I said, I want you to think about that. Think of all, I said, I bet you from the time they were 7 or 8 years old, going and going and going and going to perform at this level, whoever it was, I don't know what the event was. And they all their time would be consumed with that. And I said, you know what that is? That's complete vanity. They're going to get a little medal around their neck, and it's gone and it's done. It's over with. What I want you to spend your time with is something for the Lord. Not something so you can flip around and stretch in different ways or jump this way and flip this way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for anything. It doesn't. I mean, look how well that's done for Bruce Jenner. The guy made a box of Wheaties. Now, I'll leave that alone. The point is, you know what it was? It was vanity in his life. It never helped him. The guy is completely lost. Doesn't even know if he's male or female today. Doesn't have a clue. It was 100% vanity. That's what it was. Another thing within our culture we have to guard against, not only sports, but money, finances. Allowing that all of a sudden to become the child's goal. Allowing that, some type of measure of success when it comes to a financial means, allowing that to begin to consume them and take them over. See, this is the one here. Well, sports will take away. This is the one that's it's going to be just the drive and the ambition, all going towards of something of this world, the security or the nice house or making it that level of success. I don't ever want to see Levi driving at that for that level of success. The only thing I want to see his heart driving towards is something of the Lord. That's it. We have to be careful even when it comes to finances and what we're trying to teach our children. And then another one, we lose a lot of our kids, and this can cover so many different areas, and that's different youthful lusts that can come in. We have many things that can take our kids and destroy them, from the extremes that we see in our culture today, from drugs and how quickly they can get addicted on something that, the availability of all the different drugs that are out there right now is ridiculous. Or alcohol, or just sinful and wicked pleasures that begin to grab them and take them. Again, these are things that will grab their heart and take the place that God should have in their life. We need to protect against that. Another thing that can do that, we have to guide our children with, and that is friends. Again, this we have to parent. And by the way, understand this. If you are starting, those who don't have teenagers yet, those are the babies. If you start young with the things I'm dealing with, it saves you so much of a headache when you're a parent. If all of a sudden, and again, you need to start as a parent, because you use a whole lot more wisdom. If you have to go in and take something away, it's more of a battle than if it was never present to begin with. So friendships. And we can get into a whole message. We can do a whole series of messages on this one, do it with a different level of friendships. You have to understand, you have to parent this. They have to grow in wisdom still. They have to grow in stature still. You have to parent this. You have to know who your kids are spending time with and be in control of those friendships. Again, you're simply not looking for church kids, but you're looking for kids who really have a desire for God. And teens, please, teenagers, put the Lord first. Really, there is nothing better than serving God. Nothing. Be the teenager that's causing others to want to serve Christ, not go the other way. I think it's fine to talk about the sports and the skiing and all that. That's going to be normal. That's, that's good. Nothing wrong with that. But also talk about your devotions. Do that with your best friend. Okay, hey, so what'd you read today? Do that. This is about the Creator, the one who spoke it and the universe came into existence. The one who purchased us with his own blood, that life is completely all about. Have some conversations about him. Begin to show the desire. Hey, what would you like to do? Have you ever thought about going to the mission field? If so, where? Talk about it. I remember the pastor was my best friend. When I was 16, I ended up having to go separate ways. We'd go places, and I'd get up and do devotion. I'd try and get him out of bed. Come on, do your devotion. Get up. And he didn't want to get up. And one day I poured water on him. That didn't work. He was really upset about that day. He didn't have his devotion either. Anyhow, we've heard it said, and it show. I cannot talk. It is so true. You show me who you're. Yeah, and I'll show you who your kid is, or what they will become. All right. Show me who your friends are. Show who you are. Protect them from friends. Protect them from things that will guard against their heart. Again, we got back from New Guinea. Marianne will tell you, she got to pick out the house. I had her in the jungle for 12 years. So that was hers. My only stipulation was one thing, and she can tell you right now without me saying it, and that was my biggest concern was Levi. If we went in a house, to be honest with you, there's a bunch of kids everywhere, it was a no-go. It wasn't happening. Wasn't going to take place. Now, many times that's not possible. That was just a standard that I had set up. I put it in there. And so we were praying to that end. Lord, we want a house here. I knew the world we're living in. I don't have my phone with me. But I know today that a neighbor can come over and say, take a look at this. If you think I want that happening, you're dead wrong. And so we did that. And the house we finally found, we couldn't find any. And asked me, the number one thing that stopped us every time was because of all the other kids. And so we're at the last house. We've been praying to this end. And it was that last house on the road where we're at. We didn't see anything else around, no other signs. I thought, that's potential there. And Marianne really liked it. She said, I like this house. And we were there for a while because she was looking at everything. She really liked it. And so I think I was just sitting down while she's still walking around with the real estate agent. I was done. But I saw the homeowner come home. He was sitting in his truck out on the road, waiting for us to finish because we were late. And so I asked the real estate agent, I said, hey, can I go talk with him? And she said, yeah. So I walk out there, and Levi's walking with me. And the first thing out of his mouth when he saw Levi is, there's no other kids in the neighborhood here for him. I'm like, bingo, we found the house. This is it. Because we knew we'd have church kids over. We'd have those different things like that. And that's what we were going to do. Another thing you have to protect from in the day that we're in, please protect from this, and that is technology. That is technology. Access to pornography has never been easier in the history of the world. If you want something that'll grab their heart, just let them get a hold of that. Just let them get a hold of that. We have to protect the purity of our children. Again, a different standard I had in place. Now, there's different things I can do. You can cover that. But a different standard I had in my place, and Bethany's right here, so she can tell you, for all my kids was, they weren't even allowed a smartphone until they graduated college. That's how strict I was with it. They graduated college, Did they have phones? They did. And know how difficult it was to find a dumb phone? It was ridiculously hard to find one, but I found them. I found them. Was it a pain? It was. It was. But it was there. Now, for those who are going to allow it, please, 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 restrict that phone. There's different things you can do to that phone to really, 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 really restrict it. All right? There's the Covenant Eyes program on there, which will give you a ton of control. There are different VPNs you can use. There are different blocks. There's different ways you can even backdoor to see what they're looking at. Those things need to be in place. Yeah, I'm not worried about just a really good kid. If that's your thinking, they already have the smartphone, they're already looking at it. They're already looking at it. I mean, think about it, Dad. Let me go to Dad here for a minute. Let's go back to you're 12 years old. You're 13 years old. You're 14 years old. And all of a sudden, with unrestricted access that nobody's going to know, you have access to a magazine that you should not have. Are you going to open it? Are you going to turn that page? Yes, you are. And by the way, what they're going to see in that phone is far worse than anything in those magazines. Far worse. We have to protect our kids from technology. So please, set up Covenant Eyes or look for dumb phones. They do exist. The devil makes them incredibly hard to find, but they do exist. And if you're still going with a smartphone, I understand that. If you're going to, then absolutely, without a doubt, please install all the safeguards. They do exist, and you can control it. Let's see. Let me cover some of these other things here just a little bit. Okay. I'm debating if I run through this or I come back to it. Is everybody mad at me right now? So I don't know if I should be mad at me for 2 weeks or what. I don't know. My tires are flat when I leave. I'm going to know. And of course, the teens are really mad. You know, I never take my smartphone. That's what happens when I get home. So I'm not sure which way to go with this right now. All right. All right, we'll come back to this next week on Roy's advice. So if this doesn't work next week, we can all blame Roy. All right? All right. It is the last point I have. So next week we'll be here for 15 minutes and then we'll be done. See, that's really good. That's how that works. All right, but next week I will finish up, and that's help for raising teens. And I could spend some time there. It deals with communication and things like that. And then we'll review a little bit from this week. But please protect. There's so much out there that's there. You've got a parent and a teenager, by the way. You know, if you have a desire for God, these are different things you're going to want in place in your life on your own. Amen. All right? Look for those things. Look for them. All right.